actually a Moor Science temple in Baltimore called Temple Number 13 in Baltimore, and they actually go through that 14th Amendment naturalization process, and have people go from all over the world incorporating into that school to go through that naturalization process.
Now that process is absolutely correct for aliens and foreigners.
Exactly.
Now, so the question, therefore, hold that for a second. The obvious question, particularly for anyone who's conscious, right? If you know that you're standing on Morocco and that this is your land by birthright and you're Moorish American, can you come under the Statutory Nationalization Act, or is that a birthright, which is up here?
It's a birthright.
So if it's a birthright, it cannot be converted into a privilege, and you cannot be listed as an alien in your own land. Therefore, the process is a fraud. See the point? In other words, once you teach people principles, they'll free themselves. They just need to be educated. This is why Dred gave the knowledge to us and charged us. He says, look, he says, the half has not been told. If I told you everything, you'd go back to sleep. He says, I've given you more than enough to save yourselves. Now go out on my word and redeem your people. That's the charge. And he also said, in order to change the people, you must change their literature. And so everybody says they're Grand Sheik, and anybody got Moorish American got a card in their pocket. If they haven't produced literature and they're carrying a title, they're a fraud. Because every doctoral philosophy is required to do a treatise and a book.
Writs would only be considered literature if the writs are being used as a book. So let's say, for example, you use some writs and then they work. Taking those writs, scan or whatever like that, and putting them in a book so that the people could learn. Because if you start just putting stuff online, people are just gonna download it, switch the names, copy and paste, and then do what you're doing and get themselves in trouble. So if you present it as a book, I would say it's literature from that perspective. Right? But just to have a writ, like go to rvbaypublications.com and then you go to Writs of Freedom and then you download it, that's not literature. Those are writs, even though they're literary. Islam.
And it's supposed to be available to the public for critique. Before you meet the man or the woman who has the title, you meet their word, because the word is God. And if they haven't produced literature and they're carrying a title, they're a fraud. But if you know these rules, people can't take advantage of you. Do you understand? So it is necessary for us to teach our people the fundamental rules to bring them back into the constitutional fold of government so that we can be competent to speak with either a premier, a president, or a janitor and be totally comfortable because you know the rules. This is why Dred says, help me in my mission. He says what the mission is. He says what? To bring my people back into the constitutional fold of government, enforcing our Constitution for the United States of America. It tells you right there in the divine warning. Therefore, and he also says, take your places amongst the affairs of men, which means you must know international law. You see? And so he says, even some of the Europeans are helping me. He says, the Negro problem is your problem. Why aren't you helping me? Yes. You know, and so what occurs is if people get caught up in looking at this as a belief system, they don't take study seriously because they think they just can believe something and feel comfortable, which is extremely dangerous. because you're operating in the Aquarian age. It requires knowledge. Beliefs are out the door. They're out the door. And our people are trained with beliefs for control purposes. They just don't know that. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And so we have to give them the truths so they don't feel sensitive, thinking that we're attacking their beliefs or their God. Because most people that have been trained in dogma think that they know divine order, and they don't even know the beginning. You understand? For instance, all you got to do is test them, is go to the 7 Hermetic laws, or go to the 7 golden candlesticks in the back of the Bible, you understand, and tell them to name each one of the candles. And then give it a degree for each one of those candles. And if they can't, and they talk about they know that book, then ask them, what is those 7 stars in Jesus' hand? And if they can't tell you, then the argument's over. However, most people think they know the book because the preacher told them that. But he hasn't taught them that book because it's a Kabbalistic book. But if they tell them that, then they have to teach them the philosophies, don't they? You see the problem? So the priesthood would have a problem then, wouldn't they? You see, so the job of the Moors is to reveal that information to the common man, to free him from the black priesthood. And we're talking about black hearts. Ain't got nothing to do with complexion. Because until they know the truth, they'll never be free. And knowing their deal with emotions, you've got to give them reference points. So you give them reference points because you cannot take anything from anybody without putting something in its place. Because the keys to Roman domination is miseducation. And one of the most effective things concerning the injury to our people is that they don't know that they don't know. So we have to fix that. So keep this in mind, and this is very important, and because of difficulty, some things we would want to leave up here, but keep this in mind. When you use the word citizenship, and those who have pens, write this down because it is very important. You're saying nationality. How many people knew that? Raise your hand if you did, and don't raise it if you didn't know it. Now, sis, understand it because she's a national. But one of the things that you would recognize when, particularly when you come to the North America, you'll have our people got all kinds of degrees, but they have limited knowledge in civics, science of government. And that lack of knowledge is absolutely dangerous and key to the operations of stealing your birthright in the political realm and controlling your economics. Are we clear? And your property. Which means, keep in mind, the masses have never been allowed to handle money. In the same way why it was necessary for the black priests to create the fiction that the people were getting paid, they also needed a system of colored law to go with it to convince them. And this is why you see fiat versus money, color law versus de jure law, public policy versus constitution law, de facto government versus constitutional government. All of those things are deliberate and work hand in hand for the operations of the dark side. And that's what the people are suffering from, not racism. But the masses are told racism when what I just told you is what they're suffering from. So all the rulers know they're suffering from birthright theft. The masses are trained like animals that they're suffering from racism, which is the species of human. Do you understand? And the species is broken down into extended families called nations and nationalities. And once they got you to rebuke or to reject your bloodline or dishonor your mothers and fathers, they could put you into the artificial category and thus control your estate. Are we clear? And so you must understand that this must be in order, established, in fact, proper status. Proper person status, and status equates to estate. Are we clear? So, as the Romans took over the Western Hemisphere, they removed the E. And under feudal law, transferred your territories into states. Are you clear? And you must know this. And so when you know these things, when you're dealing with mortgages, credit cards, any instrument by which they allege to have given you a loan, understand they're really using your signature to lean against your estate, and they've given you nothing. Are we clear? This is the reason why whenever they're dealing with you, if you slow down, remove your emotions, you'll notice that they'll put about 9 sheets of paper in front of you and constantly turn them, and you're the only one signing them. Whether it's a mortgage or so-called loan. Not only that, they're supposed to be loaning you stuff, and they'll ask you for a down payment after you did your signature. You know, but usually we so happy to thinking we're getting something that we never think about, wait a minute, I came here for a loan, you're taking my stuff. How'd that work? Because it's against your estate. This is why it's very important to keep in mind whenever you're reading Constitution law anywhere on the planet, those who are in a position of authority are listed in law as trustees. Are we clear? Because government owns nothing. It's all against your estate. And this is why it's important for, particularly in North America, for them to have put their European family names on you so they could list you as the beneficiary, yet an incompetent beneficiary. Therefore, incapable to what? To receive an inheritance, thus can legally list you as a ward of the state. And then set up what is called a sestacute trust. And keep this in mind, I remind you this every once in a while. The only reason they're able to do this is because as a brand, meaning that when you accept the brands, Negro, black, colored, etc., that have nothing to do with nationhood, in real world politics, you're listed as incompetent and that you have abandoned your birthright. Particularly if you're transacting business with a European name. Because you're buying and selling in another man's name, which makes you subject. Now you understand subject? So therefore they're accusing you of agreeing to the 14th Amendment, which takes the burden of guilt off them. We're talking law now, not just emotion. Because it's trust law. Therefore, any said person in that status would be civil liter mortuus, dead in the eyes of the law. Thus, without a name and a nationality, you would be listed in real world politics as, quote unquote, a stateless person. Stateless person has no rights that any citizen of any nation on the planet has any obligation to respect or to acknowledge. However, they can choose to give you some program temporary privileges, which is what the people are suffering who are calling themselves black. Telling you how the system works and telling you why it works the way it works. Not that it works, why it works the way it works. And if you can look at the puzzle, the legal process puzzle, you know yourself to correct it. No one can correct it for you. So long as they have some Negro leader guy marching and praying around, bumping you in the walls, getting dog sick on you and stuff, keep promises, keeping hope alive and everything, and you think they can do it for you? Only you can honor your mothers and your fathers, that your days are longer on earth. They can't. That's what nationalization is. Do you understand? Do you understand the connection? If you don't understand the connection, I'll go over it again. Do you understand the connection? That's the legal process of ending the status of being a stateless person. And as long as that status is in place, you have no lawful rights. Not on the earth. Not in civilized society. Are we clear? So the mistreatment that you get by tradition is because mainly of that status. Now the other night, Sentasha, Sentinel Rising with Sentasha hosting Civil Alert. I went on a show the other night and she had on the show, featured on the show, Dred Scott's great-great-great-great-granddaughter. Dred Scott. And yes, for those who don't know, the Dred Scott case is the most important slave case ever to come before the Supreme Court of the United States, and is used all around the planet as a measure for citizenship. Are we clear? And one of the things that we discussed was a little bit of this, because a lot of people look at the Dred Scott case and they immediately start talking race. And the issue was status. And it always was status. But if you get emotional, you're going to argue race, which is not the issue. It is status. Yes.
At this time, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have our break. Dr. Brooke wants to make an announcement before we have our break. Remember, the break is for 7 minutes. Get you something to eat, Go to the bathroom, give Tarik a round of applause for what he's given to us so far.
You don't need no break.
Pulsing in the background was the floor treatment. of people in Eastern Europe during the Soviet occupation of this area. How could America condemn these Russians and turn a blind eye to inequalities of what was clearly going on in America itself, a land of free? How should Kennedy proceed? The Cuban Missile Crisis took up a great deal of his short time in power. But aligned to this was the fact that few whites considered civil rights a particular important issue. One poll put civil rights at the bottom of the list. What should be done for America? Kennedy also only won the 1960 election by very small majority, 500,000 votes. So he didn't have popular mandate for doing anything to distract. Also, the Vietnam War, who no officially declared, was absorbing more time was American covert action in his region at this time. Kennedy assassination shocked the world. His vice president, Lyndon Johnson, suddenly found himself sworn in as a president on Air Force One. Johnson had begun the politically. Important issue with needed to stop the full implementation of 1957 Civil Rights Act. But despite the fact he was in Texas, it was realized that a major Civil Rights Act was needed to add evidence of African Americans within USA society. He also used the shock of Kennedy's murder to push forward the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Part of me was to turn his vision from America, the Great Society. How should Kennedy proceed? The Cuban Missile Kennedy's the seeds of 1964 Act were now sown in Kennedy's presidency. Johnson believed that he owned into Kennedy's life to push through this act, especially as he was not elected president. America had moved on from the 1957 Act. Martin Luther King was now international figure and Malcolm X was now proclaiming that one of the militant approach could be used to gain civil rights. The apparent passive approach of 1950 was now gone. The northern city ghettos were now moving more and more towards militancy. Society has changed in just for a few short years. Johnson realized this and wanted change for potential civil unrest forced in the bill. The Civil Rights Bill success in Congress owed much to murder of Kennedy. The mood public in general would not have all allowed deliberate attempts to damage Kennedy's bill. Even so, the bill had survived the longest attempt, and Congress to seriously weaken it. Johnson played the oblivious card. How could anybody vote against his issue so dear to the late President Carter? Simply apply to the nation still entranced by Kennedy's murder to win over the Southern hardliners. Johnson told them he would not. government by the end of the segregation in South, it prohibited segregation in public places. A public place was anywhere that received any form of federal tax funding most places. This stopped lawyers' home and other private places issues. This act tried to cover every aspect that some might use to avoid implementing this act. An equal employment commission was created federal funding would not be given to segregated schools. Not that was banned in 1954, 10 years previous. Any company that was federal business, that the biggest spender of money in American business, had to do pro-civil rights charter.
That they even did what you call statutory programs in order to remove some of the oppression is proof positive that persons of African descent are not U.S. citizens, which is why they needed programs, because they're not within the constitutional fold of government. And it's quite obvious. And yet, our people would look at that as a constitutional issue, and it was simply statutory programs, because they're not citizens. And this is why it's important to understand that while you're correcting your status now, meaning that they can't do it. Anything they do can only be a program under the 14th Amendment as property. And so only you can confess the honor of your mothers and fathers. Another man can't do it for you. Thank you, Nicholas. Give him a hand, y'all. All right. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Now, Islam brother, we were talking earlier, where's the brother at? Because there were some questions that was presented up here earlier. I think the brother's here. I think he's in the back. Anyway, open up the questions. Are there any questions about status? Do you understand? Do you comprehend status? Its importance in society? Are we clear? Are we clear on the sanguinis, jus sanguinis versus jus soli? Statutory. Bloodline. This is where you need to be. 14th Amendment puts you there to give you a semblance of this. This is not this. This is a privilege and a fraud. Are we clear? It is no different than someone giving you that Federal Reserve note and then you pulling out your pocket a silver dollar. We don't mean the copper and lead coated stuff. Silver dollar. That's the money, that's fiat. It's not money. When you think it's money, then they have you plugged in the matrix. Do you understand? Meaning that you should know how to use these instruments, but never come to the illusion that you're being paid. When you have that mentality, then the Inquisitionists can beat you when they come at you for your labor fees through the IRS. Are we clear? And this is another reason why a couple weeks ago, I think it was last month, when we gave you a copy of the incorporation papers of the IRS. Did you all get that? I know we gave you incorporation papers of the United States Corporation last week. Yeah. But how many you got the incorporation papers of the Internal Revenue Service? I don't see no hands. All right. See, so it must be present with you, knowing that they're private businesses. As long as it's in your mental that they're legitimate government, you've got a subjugated mind. This is how they beat you.
A majority of the people who are out here teaching our people, they're going in to teaching from the perspective that United States government IRS, the government, whatever, Supreme Court of the whatever, and all these things are not founded by foreigners who colonized this land. As soon as you go in with the mindset, oh, the government is implementing vaccine stuff and then we got to do it because the government said that the vaccine, whatever like that, you just gave them the power to vaccinate you in mass droves. You just gave them the power by calling Walmart government, calling McDonald's government. You go to the Burger King, you come out with a nationality card talking about you're a national. You got a nationality card from Burger King. And then you expect everybody to take that serious. That's how they beat our people. Because again, remember, the priesthood is dead. And all these dead priests are teaching you that Canada, United States are governments. They're not governments. They're colonial operations. Still in 2021, they're colonial operations. They're not government. You're the government. But you can't be the government if you're Negro, black, colored, Smith, Jones, Johnson, Hebrew, NOI, and whatever else you call yourself. Because those aren't the people. Those are corporate persons disguising themselves as people, which is causing confusion. They're not the government. Walmart is not government. So if you go on Dun and Bradstreet and you pull up City of Toronto, Province of Ontario, Country of Canada on Dun and Bradstreet, and then you're still calling them government, they got you.
You got to know who you are, and you got to know who they are. You're just not guessing. You must know who they are. That's why we asked earlier last month, do you know who Clifton Barton is? Helen Edel Barton, Lawrence X. Cavaria, because those are the Nazis that own the IRS. Has nothing to do with government. They're a collection arm for the popes of Rome. Huh? Yeah. Yes. And once you understand that, you know how to respond to the IRS when they're coming for your labor. And see, the only reason, now keep this in mind. I want you to raise your hand because I want to make sure that you understand this. Because when I ask them some questions and nobody raises their hands, it makes me nervous. Because we're here for you to know. We're not here for you to accept what we say. If the IRS writes you a letter and tells you that you owe them some lunch money, right? And a lot of it, whatever. Tell me, what is the basis upon which they're drafting their instruments based on what you see here? Oh, raise your hand and tell me and explain. Feel free to talk freely. Somebody, tell me something. If the Inquisition Revenue Services, listed as the IRS, which is a private corporation that belongs to Rome, belongs to the Jesuits, has nothing to do with the United States Republic government, and is not a part of government, never was. What is the basis upon which they are making that move that you see here? Stand up, brother, explain. Come up.
They're basing that off of the 14th Amendment, that it's artificial, that person is a straw that they're writing to.
Yes.
And they really have no right to ask for funds from them.
Right.
But if a person is using a European last name and they're not in proper status,
yes,
then that's how they're able to do that.
Through the 14th Amendment.
Yes.
Does everybody understand that? Now, that's what needs to be already with you when these issues come up, not like when we're in class. Because keep this in mind, when you come to Everlasting Life and you come to the classes on Thursdays or when any of this information is given, it is given so that when you go out into the world, you're better prepared. Because when you're out into the world and you don't know what he just said, they take your head. Every one of you should have been able to get up and say the same thing, even if it's not in the exact words, that same principle. Because if you don't know it, you're in trouble. Know it. And keep in mind, you're all adults. If you don't know these principles, The children are in trouble. They don't need self-esteem, they need education. And then they'll get self-esteem. Do you understand? Because the reason the Europeans keep taking advantage of you in your own land, because you don't know it's your land, you don't know status, and most of you identify yourself not by your bloodline, you identify yourselves by your belief systems, which is a false training. Are we clear? Civilized world, you're identified by your bloodline. Your beliefs are irrelevant. Put it in your back pocket. This is why when you're dealing in national law, constitutional principle, religious tests are not required, because there are solace systems for calming people in society, just like you do drugs. Know that that's what it's for. Don't get it twisted and don't get egotistical. That's how the real world works. That's why when you go in front of the real world and you're dealing with civilization and you start talking about your beliefs, they tell you, well, it's like your green underwear. Nobody want to see them. Keep it to yourself. And that's the real world. And even when someone's holding a position of government, a religious test is not required, because those are solace systems. They're created by men as a mental drug to keep the animals cool. Now, I'm just talking to you bluntly. Now, the preacher ain't going to talk to you like that because he needs your lunch money. But I'm just telling you like it is. And all rabbis know that. All imams know that. All reverends know that. All PhDs know that. All Skull and Bones members know that. All Master Masons know that. All Kyklos know that. All Union Guard know that. All Knights of Malta know that. All Knights of Columbus know that. The only ones that don't know it is the bill payer believers. That's the real world. And keep this in mind, as I told you before, all of them are Gnostics, every last one of them. The different titles will just keep you busy. That's how the world is run. Are we clear? And when you don't know that, you're subject. Because you be thinking you got some kind of special doorway to Allah and Jesus and everything. And the imam and the rabbi and the Brahmin are all Gnostics. They got the same high degrees of knowledge of the Adam chambers amongst themselves. And then they take the same knowledge and give flavors, ice cream to keep them busy. That's why the Quran tells you, says what? There's no sectalism in Islam. What they got, about 79, 80 sects? See the game? That's for the masses, for the dummies who pay the bills. Do you understand? And then sometimes, once in a while, you have somebody who's sincere amongst the masses who find it out. Then the priesthood will murder them because they know they're going to tell the others the game. That's what got Malcolm killed, because he found out. Do you understand? We're talking real world politics now. That's also what got Martin Luther King killed, because he's a 33-degree Mason and threatened the Don that he was going to tell, talking about the mountaintop, which is the Great Seal. That's the mountain.
And that's also what got Khalid killed. And that's also what got Dr. Sebi killed. And that's what also got Pac killed. And that's also what got Michael Jackson killed, and Prince killed, and Whitney killed. You still think they don't know? That's also what got Malcolm's grandson killed. That's what got Clarence 13X killed. Farrakhan's still alive though. Interesting. What exactly got them killed is that they found out that their own sold them out. And anybody with influence is obviously gonna tell. Oh, that's what got Nipsey killed. And then when you go right now to where the Marathon store used to be, everything's boarded up. They didn't preserve anything, shut it down, because they want no remnants left of the good work that the gangbanger guy was doing. They want to keep the BS alive. That's what got Chief Malik, Jeff Fort, locked up in Supermax. That's what got Fred Hampton killed. Because all of them found out that's what got Steve Coakley killed. Because all of them found out, damn, it's not the European. It's our own. It's not the European. It's our own. That's our biggest problem. It's not some European. Because in all these years, we've been following the dead priesthood. And as soon as the dead priesthood is about to get exposed, here they come to shut you up. Why do you think they keep snitching on Canaanland Moore's YouTube? Why do you think Dane Calloway snitched? That's no different than what they did to Malcolm and whatever. Try to shut up the people. Why do you think Rizza Islam snitched? Why do you think Transatlantic, whoever, has all those videos up, all those old school videos? Why do you think they snitched? Why do you think Taharka Bay snitched to YouTube? Look here, they can't shut down stuff, you know, all you gotta do is appeal. And once you have a good reasoning for your appeal, YouTube is gonna lift the snitch stuff, and then they're gonna let you know that, oh yeah, this guy snitched. YouTube threw them under the bus. They thought they were gonna pull something, and YouTube threw it under the bus, and then now we're telling you that these people are snitches to YouTube, but you know on here what we're saying, you're still going over there following these dead priests. Keep playing games.
On top. See, because they've been to the mountain top, and they've seen promised land. But if they tell the slave, they might not get there. Get the point? Because it's got an oath to Rome. But like Drawley said, he says, this is no secret organization, and I pulled the cover off of all secret organizations.
That's why Martin said, I'm not going to make it there with you. I seen the mountaintop, the promised land, but I'm not going to make it there with you. Why is he not going to make it there? What did he know? What did he know? He knew the same thing El Haj knew. That Jesse, Abernathy, and all the rest of them that were standing on the balcony knew. But he was the only one willing to tell. And then he realized all those ones are still alive, and then he got shot in the neck. While they're fighting for the power position that he had when he was alive after he got murdered. Now everybody's claiming to be the next Martin Luther King and all this BS. And then now you have rapper girlfriend guys trying to talk about rapper guy is like Martin Luther King and all this BS. Get the hell out of here. None of these rapper guys don't even have the balls. All of them are traitors. They got 50 chains and they got money to their ear. They're a traitor. They're not about the people.
Why? Because they've been doing what? Living off of your birthrights. And you are the great Masonic secret. The Great Seal. And the sooner you understand that, the sooner you'll understand the politics of the planet. And remove your emotions, and it has nothing to do with what you believe or what you think you believe. And there's nothing wrong with what you believe, but just understand it's just like your sneaks. Cool. One day it's Adidas, and the next day it's Nikes. Next week you convert to something else. But in the real world, it's mathematics, cosmology, and geometry. That's real religion. Do you understand? That's what that crescent and star represents, cosmo, the universe. Are we clear? The dual trine, star up, star down trine, star Dawood, hex alpha, that's yours too. And see, when you don't know that you're Muslim and Hebrew in the real world, and their degrees, most people take them, well, this religion that's for the masses. Understand, all high priests, all of them are Muslim, Yahudi, and they got a Christ degree. They're degrees for the priesthood. For the masses, they're separate religions to keep you enslaved. Are we clear? It's one of the reasons why Prophet Muhammad emphasized the brotherhood of man. Do you understand? When you really understand this thing, the masses have been played. You're in a new era of time now. You got to know about how things really work and not be biased against people because of their claim of their different religions. Because remember, the masses are under mind control. And to remind you again, so when you look in the back of the Bible and you hear the words in the book of John when it says, I heard one speak with a voice of many waters, and he was standing among 7 golden candlesticks, and in his right hand he had 7 stars. And then you see Muslims make the Hajj, go to Mecca, and they make 7 counterclockwise rotations around the cube, Kaaba. Well, both of those books are Kabbalistic. And if you don't know that, and you can't name the lords of each one of those golden candlesticks, don't talk about that book because you don't know what you're reading. And if you can't name each one of the lords when you make the counterclockwise circle around Kaaba and the degrees of their orbital planes, don't talk about that Quran because you don't know that book. And if you don't know why that meteorite is in the east corner of that cube in relationship to those circles, then somebody's playing you. And this is really what's wrong with the world. Meaning they're all given the truth in different code systems, but they're divided by the priesthood, thinking they got something different. And they're cutting each other's throat, talking about their love for God, Allah, Moses, Muhammad, Jesus, even though there's no J in Hebrew. And so the darkness that's on the planet was created by the priesthood for their own personal benefit. And so the world must be pulled out from under the shield of the dark priesthood. Because they neither love Allah, nor Jesus, nor Muhammad, nor Musa. Most of them are the murderers of the prophets. That's why you're in the trouble that you're in. And they're in partnership with Rome. This is the reason why the priesthood sells your birth certificates and your marriage certificates to the Department of Orphans, and they list it in the Commerce Department, and the corporate state gives the preacher a kickback. And they sell the womb of the woman, and it makes all issue of the womb wards of the state. And this is how they get you. That's how the birth certificate operates in society as a bond. Exactly. And if you understand these things, again, you must understand why I entered this argument. So ultimately, you're going to do some refinements in the future in your arguments and in your instruments. But essentially, for those who, you're going to have to do some studying, but I'm going to jump you a little bit for your protection. All right? And you'll study what it means later. All right? Some of you know, some of you don't. But when you got any instrument, keep this in mind. Say you get a ticket, right? And you sign that ticket, right? Right? You get a dead pledge called a mortgage, and you sign that dead pledge, right? You get a credit card, and you sign that credit card, right? Get a license of any type, and you sign it, right? You get what is called a check, and you sign it, right? We're going to talk about that in a minute, but for the moment, anywhere where you sign, right? They're going to get upset because you can't do that. No, that's what they're going to say, right? But get used to it. Y'all see that? Huh? Right? Now talk. Just feel free to talk. What does that mean and why is it done? Get a brother Mike.
So we are supposed to be the executors of our estate.
Because as soon as you say executor and also authorized representative, which implies executor, but now you're just saying executor, being blunt, and all rights reserved, what does this stop them from doing? What does this do to any instrument that you're presenting to another?
They can't continue to sell it over and over again.
All right, this is what it does. It blocks them from easily walking in and out of the sisterhood trust of your estate that they don't tell you about by virtue of the straw that they created under the 14th Amendment, by which they move bonds, T-bonds around the world.
Okay.
Translation, it stops them from monetizing against your estate.
Now, do they do that regardless, even if you corrected your name? So,
yes, but in other words, I just got name only, but just like this. And also, sometimes when you do the attribute, you can also put all rights within it, and kind of write it in it, because they have a habit of lifting your signature too. In case you didn't know that, because remember, they're taking what you say the trustee position. So keep in mind. And this is very, 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 very extremely important. The United States Corporation that most people think is the government is a private, for-profit, religious holding and securities company. It's a corporation, not the land. And if you don't know that, you're in trouble. So every time you give them an instrument, no matter what it is, what they want from you at all times is the signature, because your signature is the gold. Why? Because you're not handling money. They're liens against the Moorish estate.
now, is that the best way to do it? Should we ever put UCC 1-308?
You can put UCC, yes, because it's a commercial venue. Do you understand what I'm saying? And you can put that up here or down here. We're near the signature.
What's the other one? UCC
yeah.
1-103?
207. Yes.
No, the other one. 1-
308.6.
No, 308 is the new one that took over.
Yes. In other words, what they do, they switch it around to be, when you begin to become conscious, that's why they switch numbers. But keep this in mind, and the reason I'm saying this, because people...
What he wrote down is all rights reserved. Authorized representative, executor. Because everything that you sign with these colonists is a contract. Because it's a contract, and you're the only one signing, you want to protect yourself. So you write all rights reserved before you sign. You write all rights reserved before you sign, so that way you're protecting yourself from these criminals who are pretending to do legitimate contracts when the contracts aren't legitimate. And don't use ARR either, because as soon as you say ARR, that's an acronym, and that could mean anything. Automotive regulatory remission. That got nothing to do with rights. Always be specific, don't be vague. And we know Moors tell you, yeah, just put ARR on it and that means everything. No, it doesn't. That's an acronym. And if an acronym, any word could be put there. So don't be lazy. ARR and that's it, because the master teacher of the whatever said we could just put ARR and everything's going to be cool. No, it's not. That's not all rights reserved. All rights reserved is ALLRIGHTS RES reserved. Make sure you spell it out. Don't get into this lazy habit of half-stepping. Kane told you in the 80s ain't no half-stepping. People still half-stepping in 2021.
Different methods, but birthright is superior to that.
So all we need is the all rights.
This is the reason why we get people in their proper person. See, this is what we have to keep in mind. Keep in mind, even when you're talking about the secret treaty of Verona, read on the floor of the Congress, that they make reference to 1884, because remember 1884, 1885 is when they had the Berlin Conference, dividing again amongst the Christian nations the estate of the Moors under the auspices of the Ottoman Empire, which is a continuation of the secret treaty of Verona. They just use different words, and if you don't know history, you don't know that you're talking about you. That's why it's important to know yourself, so that you know when you're making reference in legal documents. So when they're talking about the Ottoman Empire in, say, the Berlin Conference, they're making reference to the true Hebrew Moors. Do you understand? Translation in its corrupted form, the real Muslims and Jews, which is you. Do you understand? And if you don't know that, you're in trouble, because we're talking real world politics, not opinion. We're telling you how the world really works. Yourself, and then yourself.
Islam, brother. Say you receive a paycheck from the government and you signed it. You signed it. Do you still put all rights reserved?
All right. Hold that. Listen. Statement. If you receive a paycheck from the government, right? First of all, you must know that you ain't being paid. See, that's the first thing. See, so this is back to what you call connotative linguistics. What gives you the advantage here, and the reason you're given this information, we know how people dispense communications in this society, which is a slave culture. But your advantage is to know better, meaning that you use the language, but you must know that you're in a matrix. You got to learn how to tiptoe through the tulips. That's why you're given this information. Traficant speech, right? Keep this in mind, you all. Florida Congress, and every once in a while, this is why we remind people every once in a while to go over the congressional records so that you can understand what their position is with you. So this is your Congress, right? All right. So Federal Reserves, this is Representative Traficant on the Florida Congress, right? Federal Reserves are unsigned.
Oh yeah, and don't forget, that's why they killed James Traficant too. Because he was telling all this stuff that they don't want you to know.